Hi, all you people out there. So, I wanted to share a personal story. I've been kind of looking on YouTube and just trying to see if there's anything out there about a condition that my daughter was born with. My oldest daughter, let me see what my oldest daughter. She is now 10. And she was born with a condition called duodenal atresia. And excuse me if I look off, I have my computer open to the WebMD just to read the actual definition to you. Duodenal atresia is the absence or complete closure of a portion of the channel within the first part of the small intestine, or partial obstruction due to narrowing of the duodenum. And with McKenzie, basically, the opening's only so big and hardly anything was getting through. I found out in April of 2005 that I was pregnant. She was my first. She was unexpected. Her father and I had just kind of been casually dating, and that was that. So I found out in April of 2005 that I was pregnant. In June of 2005, I went for my first anatomy scan, which is, the norm. The tech didn't say anything then, which they're not supposed to. But I got a call a week or two later from my OB saying, you need to go for another ultrasound with an MFM doctor. They think they see something in the baby's stomach that we need to check out. Which, of course, first baby, and I'm losing my mind. But we go for that a few weeks later, and they see what they refer to as a double bubble. And that's very common in duodenal atresia. They could clearly see it. I really wish I had an ultrasound picture to show everybody. But all my ultrasound photos are of baby's head. Nothing of her stomach, which I don't know how I feel about that anymore. But, so that happened. And they warned me ahead of time that because of this condition, I was very likely to have abnormal fluid throughout the entire pregnancy. The risk of preterm labor was small, but the risk of abnormal fluid levels, meaning fluid being too high, were really, the risk was there, and they wanted to be sure that, we kept an eye on it. And fast forward to August, and I'm looking down at my photo here, fast forward to the beginning of August, and I was fairly certain that I was losing my mucus plug. And I was right. The next day, the doctor saw me, and she's like, "You're dilating." So we went straight to labor and delivery, and they were like, "Yeah, you're dilating and you're having contractions." And I was having massive contractions that I couldn't feel. And I later found out that I couldn't feel them because of the way that McKenzie was turned. And that's a later story. But she was turned the wrong way, and she was turned sunny side up pretty much the entire time. So she was facing my back, which is, I believe, one of the reasons why I didn't feel the contractions. I'm not totally sure, I'm not an expert. I just know I didn't feel anything. And if I can get this to focus, that was my big old belly, and I was only 28 weeks in that photo. So it was crazy amount of fluid. I was measuring 36 weeks in that photo. I still remember the doctor telling me I measured 36 weeks. And it was like, I'm 28 weeks. I was 28 weeks in 5 days or something. And it was insane for me. They did manage to stop my labor, which is the excellent part. Managed to stop my labor. I did have to have quite a bit of fluid removed from my stomach. And let me say, some moms out there who have children who had the same condition that McKenzie had may experience the same thing. You have so much fluid in you that there are two options, honestly, without delivering you right away. They gave me a pill to reduce the fluid level, which I could only take until I've reached 32 weeks, and then there presented a danger of some valve in the heart not closing. So immediately at 32 weeks, it was done, pill's done. But they are also able to put a needle in your stomach and attach that to a tube and drain some fluid out. And let me say, that is not a pleasant experience. At least the first doctor who did it, never again. I cried. I was miserable. My actual MFM doctor was wonderful. She knew how to do it. And the 2 times that she did it, I didn't feel a thing. It was just beautiful. So I had fluid drained 28 weeks, 29 weeks, and I want to say like 32 and 33 weeks. And they were draining liters of fluid from my stomach. I was filling probably a bottle and a half at a time. So, you know, over the course of those weeks, it was about 6 liters of fluid that they drained from my abdomen, which it's insane to think about. So there we go. 28 weeks preterm labor. They were able to stop it. I went home and was put on strict bed rest. Not very fun. I was only allowed to get up to go to the bathroom and take a 5-minute shower every day. I could not go up and down the steps. So literally, somebody had to cater to me, which I thank God for my family, because my family took care of me during that time. Especially my sister and my mother. They gave up so much for me, and I am so grateful to them. So we made it to 34 weeks. That's a big deal, honestly, because I knew ahead of time that McKenzie was going to need surgery to correct her problem. The real question was, how bad is it, and how extensive is this surgery going to be? You know, there are multiple ways that the stomach cannot, you know, is it not open at all? Is it too small? You know, those types of questions they couldn't be answered until she was born. I made it to 34 weeks, and 34 weeks was a tough week. I was at the hospital 5 of 7 days, I believe, leading up to that. I went for a stress test, and you know, my mucus plug started leaving, so my mucus plug started coming out, and so we went to the hospital for that until finally September 25th, 4 in the morning or so, my water breaks. And my sister had been downstairs sleeping on the couch, and I called her and said, we gotta go. My water broke, and we floored it to the hospital. And let me tell you something. My water broke forever. You know, the baby plugs the water, basically. It just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And my car was soaked. The triage room that I was first in was soaked. It was a mess. But all in all, it was my most difficult labor. It was my most difficult labor. But in all honesty, it was my first time. And she was coming out sunny side up. And they found to kind of say, you want more medicine, hit the button. But enough of that. You know, she was born, my smallest baby, 5 pounds, 12.2 ounces. They counted down to the nitty gritty ounce with her because they knew that she was going to need the surgery. And they whisked her off to the NICU. So I didn't get to see her much that first 2 days, this pediatric surgeon came. He was someone I had found outside of the hospital, but he was like, I will come to you, whatever you need. He had explained the surgery to me basically in detail beforehand, but he said, you know, until I get in there and can have an x-ray of her stomach and all of that, I won't know exactly what we need to do right away. But he came very next morning. She wasn't even 24 hours old when they whisked her back. And there went my baby. The surgery went great. I mean, you couldn't have asked for it to be better. The first 2 days she was on a ventilator, which there are no pictures of that. I would not allow people to take a picture of her on a ventilator. I mean, in all honesty, my mother may have one, but it was a very difficult thing for me to face. You don't want to see your child hooked up to a breathing machine and you don't know if your child's going to make it out or not. First 2 days she was on the ventilator. I think on day 2, they had to put her under the jaundice lights. But she came off the ventilator, I believe it was the Wednesday after her birth. She was born on a Sunday, so I believe the Wednesday after her birth she came off the ventilator. She was still under the lights, but they let her off so I could hold her. Woohoo! Fast forward though, the surgeon was coming in almost on a daily basis to see her, and he said, you know, we can't feed her actual food. They were just giving her like IV fluids, and I'm not positive what they were called at this point in time. You would think I would have written it down, but they said, you know, we can't feed her until she has a bowel movement, and there had been this tube going into her stomach, and they had said, and that tube pulled out all the little bile that was building up. They had said that, you know, until that comes out clear and she has a bowel movement, she can't have any feeds. And I actually have a picture. I don't know if we can see it here, but here is a picture of me holding my little princess, and it should be this tube, I believe, right here. You can see it. I think that's the tube that was going in through her mouth. See that one right here. You can definitely see the tube coming out of her mouth right there. And that was just connected to something that, you know, it had a little at the end of it just had a little bucket, little basket. It was a tiny little thing. Finally, week after the surgery, it was the Monday after the surgery. Okay, gonna try this again because my camera keeps cutting off. So the tube was just to pull bile out of her stomach, or to help until her intestines were fully formed and she had a bowel movement. This is Monday after the surgery, so a complete week later, she finally has a bowel movement. They told me they were able to give her 1 milliliter of fluid, of breast milk, and they were going to see how she tolerated it. And this was every 3 hours too. They were feeding her every 3 hours. So I was finally able to give her a bottle that day of my breast milk. And at some point the surgeon came in. He came back to check her out. And normally what they would do is they would just add 1 milliliter of breast milk every day. So 1 milliliter, 2 milliliters, 3, and so forth until the baby reaches a full feed. The surgeon said she's not really meant to be here in the NICU. She's happy and healthy. And the only other reason that she is here is because she had this stomach condition. So I fully believe that you can double the feeds and get her out of here as soon as possible so that she can go home, because she doesn't need to be here. And thankfully, the doctors at the NICU agreed with him, and they doubled her feeds. So we went from 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 until she was at a full feed. So 2 weeks after she was born, 14 days, she was 14 days old, they came to me and they said, the doctor's in the NICU, and they were like, we believe she can go home tomorrow, permitting she doesn't have anything happen overnight. Excuse me. Permitting nothing happens overnight, we fully believe she can go home tomorrow. And I got up the next morning, went to the NICU, and they were like, we're just getting some stuff together, and you should be able to go home relatively soon today. I called my mother a little while later, and she came to pick us up. Now, we did have to see the pediatric surgeon for about 6 months afterwards. We would regularly go in about once a month. He would check her scar, make sure it was healing properly. And then he would check her weight, so forth, make sure, general questions. General questions the pediatrician usually checks out too. But his job as well was, he's checking her out to make sure that everything's okay. We also saw the pediatrician fairly regularly. I want to say we went about every other week until she was about 4 months old. And then we followed a normal schedule outside of that. But the pediatrician was concerned about her weight for a while. McKenzie was a tiny baby. She was born at 5 pounds, 12 ounces. And she's still a skinny little thing at 10. I can't help that. I think she weighs about 55 pounds now. And that's okay with me. She is gaining weight at her own. And we're back in a new location. As I was saying, McKenzie is a very petite 10-year-old. Now, she is on medicine for something non-related to her stomach issue, which affects her ability to eat a lot. But outside of that, she has no issues. She has had a happy and healthy life since having her surgery at a day old, which, not even a broken bone. We've had no outside problems related to her stomach condition. Not one. And I am so extremely thankful that we've had that happen, because, you always worry that something else might happen. Something related to the condition might come up. And in my family, we have got a lot of stomach problems. I myself have acid reflux and some underlying stomach condition that they're trying to figure out. My sister has a stomach condition. I have an older brother who has acid reflux. My mom has acid reflux. So, we know. I also have a cousin who had to have stomach surgery when he was a kid because it didn't open correctly. It wasn't the same thing that McKenzie had. It opened and closed on the wrong ends or something. So, we know there are stomach issues in my family. And so I'm very grateful that we were able to correct this issue right away. And for anybody out there who may be going through something like this, or, you're pregnant and you just found out that the baby has a underlying condition such as duodenal atresia, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. I went through 6 weeks of bed rest to have her, and it was pure hell those 6 weeks. It really was. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I did what I had to do, and she was perfectly healthy outside of her stomach condition. And I am so thankful to her surgeon, Dr. Buck, because he did everything he could for her. And he wanted her to have a semi-normal start to her life. So he got her out of the NICU as soon as he could. He's like, yeah, let's do this. And we were very lucky that 15 days and she was home, and we've had no problems outside of that. And for anybody out there who could be experiencing this and you don't know much, this is my experience, and while it was it was somewhat easy. I mean, I had a lot of issues with my pregnancy, and that was the hardest part. Keeping her in was the hardest part. But outside of that, she had a great time. Not that the NICU was great, but, we had a relatively easy time in the NICU. And I'm very, very, very thankful for that. So for anybody out there who's going through this, I've been there, and you can get through it. It's going to be hard. It could be a lot harder than you expect it to be, or it could, it could turn out wonderful in the end, and, you get a short stay in the NICU, and you can take your baby home really soon. I'm very grateful. I'm so, so grateful. I owe everything to Dr. Buck and the staff of the NICU at the time, because they were wonderful. And I just thank them from the bottom of my heart. I will never forget him. I will never forget the doctors who were there in the NICU.